All right, and we're live again. Mark England, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Michael, thank you for having me back, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. So it's been a while. It's been about a year and a half since first had you on, and as I said before, you connected me with probably a half dozen episodes with amazing people from your Enlifted program and just good people around you. So really appreciate you coming back on and hearing about what's going on in your life.
Very cool. Love him or hate him. I was listening to Andrew Tate talk about the necessity of having a team.
Yeah,
He said, if you want to do some cool stuff, some big things, you got to have a team. He said the idea of the lone wolf doing he's like, that's not really real.
yeah.
And I did that for 8 years.
Mhm.
So I understand that. I did that for 8 years. And well, it'll be 10 in January. So I've been doing mindset for 18 years.
Mhm.
And the first eight, I did it by myself. Cool, good experience. And the last 10, I've had, it's been me, myself and my business partner, Adam. And then we've had a variety of great contractors. And then the past 3.5, we've had Kim Kesting,
Mhm.
um, on as a core team member. And now she's partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So,
It's an interesting thing. It's actually it's kind of a good way to kick this off is about like the power of community. And one of the things I've been thinking about, Mark, is there is this idea about like the lone wolf, that like Sigma mentality of like I need to go out on my own and I don't need anybody else to, be, on my side. I can do everything myself. Specifically in like the mental performance realm, it seems like that is like there's a cultural like paradigm around that when it actually like the more people you have around you, like you do not just like be able to bounce off ideas, but it's kind of a necessity for getting into your own personal growth of having other people around you. But what was that kind of process for you? Like you said, 8 years of kind of doing it solo, then getting into a team. What was that like transition like for you?
um, very good question. And there are people that gravitate. I'm one of them that gravitate towards solo stuff. Um, Fighting, for instance. The so I've had two. I've fallen in love on site twice, taking a handful of beautiful women out of the conversation. The first time was my first jujitsu class in 1996, and the second time it was in 2003 when I saw what we can call transformational wordsmithing. Somebody was doing an emotional detoxification workshop, and they just dismantled it. They dismantled this woman's victim mentality about it was a embarrassing bad breakup, um, with words. And I was like, that's some verbal jujitsu, and I want to learn it.
Hmm.
And so, getting in the ring, yes, you have a team, you're there, you got your guys in your corner. That's a fucking lonely place.
Yeah.
It's you and some other trained guy that's trying to punch you in your nose in front of all your people. And then, I've given a lot of presentations, a good amount, and it's just you up there. So there's part of me that gravitates towards that. And as I have proceeded down the path of being in the business of mindset, there's so many aspects to it. And I also, during that period of time, have learned what my strengths are and what they're not. And it's super fun to have it's just more fun. It's just more fun being on a team.
Yeah.
It's more fun being on a team when you can focus on your strengths and, other people can focus on theirs and do what they're good at. And putting together a team of people that are competent and complement each other. That's, it's the difference between like a solo violinist and an orchestra.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got a much wider range of things that you can do.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's more fun. It's more relaxing. It's like it's
Yeah. I
stressful.
think,
It's stressful being that lone guy. Like I think we watched too many movies in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, like Die Hard. Like it's just this one
Just
dude and
one rogue dude.
crawling. Yeah, one guy crawling through a or Rambo, one guy crawling through an air duct with an MP5 and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and some cuts and scars, and he's going to take out all these guys. It's like, okay, cool, and it's just more fun.
Yeah.
I
I
said it three
remember
times.
there was like a 6 month stint where anything that said like the Sigma male or like go on your own was a picture of Keanu Reeves as John Wick. And it was like it glorified this like solo approach of you can do it all, you're the badass, like you don't need anybody else around you. But I think also, Mark, it seems like in that solo venture, it can be very easy to think that you're the only one that has these struggles or these problems that you're facing, and realize that when you actually get around other people in an event or even just a buddy and realize, yeah, they're going through the same shit that I
Yep.
am. And it's a lonely venture to think like you're the only person that's dealing with poor stories or can't get your consistency right or failures in business, whatever it is. That's a lonely feeling to have. So just that connection of just chatting with another person, it doesn't need to be this big profound thing where you're seeing somebody always on stage giving you advice. It could just be a gathering of people that share some love and say, yeah, I'm going through some shit too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest tricks of the victim mentality in all its flavors, and the victim mentality has more flavors than Baskin Robbins. One of the tricks of the victim mentality is thinking that we're the only one with it, or you take out victim mentality, put in imposter syndrome. You know, one of the biggest tricks, if not, someone said no, it is the biggest trick of the imposter syndrome is thinking we're the only person that has it. Take out imposter syndrome, put in a telephobia, the fear of not being good enough. That biggest trick is thinking that we're the only one with it. And yeah, it is that's what a lot of high level masterminds or C-suite groups or billionaires that get, and I know one, two, that get together and play poker uh once a month. They're not looking for answers. They're just looking for somebody who can understand their level of problems and they can
Right.
talk about it. Someone heard them say it, and that's half the medicine. And then if we keep going, it's like, okay, someone to share your problems with. What about sharing the wins? It's more fun to share wins. You knock a big sale out of the park, it's way more fun to high five a bunch of group of people that are they're helping you do it, and you can share in the spoils of victory like that. Who has a Christmas party by themselves?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw myself a Christmas party because I knocked it out of the park this year, and then you're there with a pizza, like watching
Yeah.
Netflix.
Right. It's interesting. When Joel Cochran was on, I've referred to this numerous times about the best coaches are ones that instill confidence in other people. So the best
Mm-hmm.
thing that you can do is be there as a support to celebrate the wins. Because if you can build somebody's confidence up, and sometimes all it takes is just sometimes listening to them and just an attaboy or an attagirl can go a long way into that. It's not something where you need to give this sound advice all the time, just to be heard, just to be like
Yep.
seen for a bit and be like, I feel you. Like it's one of the best things that you can do, not just as a coach, but just as a friend or just as a person.
1,000%. Jordan Peterson, I love that guy. He gets emotional when he talks about how little encouragement people need.
Yeah.
Just a handful. You don't need 1,000 people telling you you're good enough. Five, three, three
Yeah.
people that you like and that know you, and they're like, "Fucking go for it, dude."
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
So you recently, last time you were on, Mark, we talked a lot about how you created Enlifted, like your story of how you got into that, and now just finished like your 46th group, over 460 coaches now that have gone through the Enlifted program. And I often ask like about evolution of coaching and thought from the beginning to now. If you think back to from the beginning when you started it to now going through, over 400 people, what's some of the biggest evolutions that you found in your approach to mindset and your approach to coaching and helping others?
That's a great question. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is if you're going to teach it, if you're going to teach, like and I tell the coaches this a lot, and I'm doing the first 100, I'm delivering the first 100 Enlifted level 1 certifications. We've delivered 46 so far. So we've graduated 460, give or take, Enlifted coaches. So it's 10 people per cert, 9 weeks per cert. All the calls are live. All the coaching sessions are done by me. It's, I deliver all the trainings. And at this pace, I'll be done Q4 2030. And after that, the curriculum will be baked. It's a long-winded answer, and since we're talking about community and things, the curriculum will be baked. Enlifted trainer will be rolled out, and there will be other enlifted coaches that have stayed in position and have gotten the amount of experience that they need and proficiency with the enlifted method to be able to certify it. And I tell them, and I am right when I say that if you really want to know what you're talking about, eventually you got to teach it. To come full circle on the information, it's got to come back out of you in not just an application sense. It's in you have to teach other people to do it. If you want to know jujitsu, you've got to teach it. Okay. If you want to know mountain biking, teach it. If you want, what's the old saying? If you want to know something about it, write a book about it. And I mean, it just because there's levels of insight to insight. There's levels of understanding or getting it to a concept. And the more of these certs that I deliver, the more convinced I am about that statement. That
Why is that?
it's the ability to see things broadens. So I'm only going to have X amount of interactions with clients. Okay. When we certify coaches and they go out, I've been asked so many crazy questions about our coaches going out and coaching people, interactions that I haven't had, and that I've got to make a decision about. It's I mean, I was good enough to start teaching. I was a good coach before I started teaching, and now I'm an even better one because everything is just zoomed out so much.
Mm.
So that's my answer to how do I know? Everything is zoomed out. It's not that I have more techniques. It's just I've got a zoomed out, broader perspective about what's going on and why in coaching interactions, in workshops. When I first started, and a lot of it was due to my imposter syndrome and my complete lack of knowledge of how to breathe when I was coaching. My vantage point, it was like looking through a straw.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, that perspective zoomed out and broadened. So I've got a different set of eyes. I've got different vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put into words. And people that have been, there's something about 10 years, dude. A buddy of mine who's he's the first pro MMA fighter in Virginia. Rick McCoy, Richard Floyd McCoy the third, actually. Tell you a quick little story here in a second.
Sure.
That's just wild and cool. He owns the MMA Institute and has had the largest stable of amateur and professional fighters, which he's cornered all of them for years. He goes, it's just something about 10 years. He said after 10 years, he could just see everything. He could just see everything. Oh, and just an interesting side note about that guy. You ever heard of DB Cooper?
No.
the guy that hijacked the plane in 1972 and for ransom, got a whole shitload of cash
Okay.
and jumped out the back with a parachute. It's the most famous unsolved robbery in the United States.
No
Look,
shit. Okay.
no shit. That was his dad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was his dad. Um, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., that was his father. He did that jump and then he did the same jump 3 months later. And yeah, so this whole dude, look up DB Cooper. We can
Yeah.
we can talk about this afterwards. It's
Yeah.
nuts. Wild story. That was his dad. So anyway, yeah, perspective,
Mhm.
perspective, and just a deeper love of the game. What else has changed for me? Um, I have one goal in this work, and it's to do it for 50 years. I'm 18 years in. I'm going to do it for 50. It's in my calendar. Um, and yeah, I was only able to make that decision after 10 years, 10 years of doing this work. Um, I looked around. I was a terrible student in high school and college, like bad. I wasn't just disruptive. I was destructive. I hated it because I was bored. Anyway, and so after 10 years of this thing holding my attention, I've got so much appreciation for the game of transformational wordsmithing mindset, which is most people think mindset is goal setting and um, uh, uh, motivation and turning yourself into David Goggins.
Mhm.
It's way cooler than that. It's
Yeah.
way cooler than that. It's the art and study of storytelling because that's what our mindset is, everybody. Our mindset is the story that we tell ourselves. That's the enlifted definition of mindset. It's the story that we tell ourselves. You all are telling yourself a story about stuff. You're telling yourself a story about your body. You're telling yourself a story about your partner. You're telling your story about your neighbor. You're telling yourself a story about money. You're telling yourself a story about the government,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's a story, and it's
Mhm.
made up of words. And most people don't have a functional, practical, simple definition of mindset. And so then how are you going to work on something that you don't even know what it is? I'm going to work on my mindset. What do you mean?
Right.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to work on it. Yeah, I'm going to go listen to 19 podcasts at 3x speed so I can say that I'm the guy that listened to 19 podcasts in a month. Yeah. So they were the simple people in the mindset space.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's one of the biggest takeaways that I've got from doing this podcast, Mark, is when we chatted and talked about the definition, because I'm like, this is such an aloof term for so many people
Yeah.
of what mindset is. We talk about strength in the physical realm and fitness. It's a much easier to describe from there. You know, you lift more weight on the bar, you've got stronger. But if you talk about what is a strong mindset, everybody starts going into their subjectivity of, well, it's this 30-second, Rocky cut scene of, going at it alone and stuff like that, and thinking that, like, no, that's a day. That's not a mindset. And when you said it's the story that we tell ourselves, as simple and consistent as that was, I was like, that's exactly it right there. And stories are made up of words. They're made up of sentences. Sometimes it's out of our mouth, but often it's more what's going on inside of our head.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And we're big on writing.
Mhm.
We're very big on writing. And we're not journaling like most people think of journaling. Yes, journaling, you're getting words on paper. But most of the time, half the time, journaling is a net negative because people don't do anything with the words once they hit paper. Okay.
Mhm.
They're just like, look, I got it in writing. See, here, I've been wronged. Or here, yeah, cool. There's way more to it than that. And I could talk about that. And as far as, you mentioned sometimes we say it, most of the time we think it. Think in three levels, everybody. So our stories, most people keep their stories, the good stories, the bad stories, the stories that they want to create in the future, the stuff they're afraid of in the future. Most of the time, those stories are kept in our head, and that's where they go the fastest. Stories kept in the head, rate of speed, the rate of the story is one of the primary levers when it comes to someone's ability to change their story. So the three primary levels levers, it's the words we use, how we breathe, and the speed of the story. Stories in the head go the fastest. They go the fastest. And you can take this to the bank. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change.
Mhm.
The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. So stories kept in the head, they go the fastest. It's the most disorganized, and it has the least amount of content. People do not think in long paragraphs. They think in little half sentences and little flashes of pictures or little mental movies.
Right.
That's going super fast. When we say something, when we tell a story, it's slower than when it's kept in the head, and it's more organized because there is a structure to spoken English.
Mhm.
And then the slowest form, so in the head it's the fastest, out of the mouth it's slower, and then the writing is the slowest form of storytelling.
Mm.
And if you want to change the story, so the faster the story goes, the harder it is to change, and the fastest way to slow down the story is to pick up a pen and write it out. Not because not in order to have it in writing, but in order for you to look at the words and start making changes to them. That's your rough draft of your mindset. Most people don't even have a rough draft to hand in.
Right.
And just like high school and college, most of the time, that second and third draft are better products. It's a more clear argument or
Mhm.
story or description of something that happened than the first time that we get it out. Most people don't get the story out, and they
Right.
think that they just need to become a harder version of themselves and everything will be great.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's of how we think and the speed of our brain. And I think that's where,
Yes.
I've had this of trying to get things out, and when I feel unclear or like anxious about where I'm going, it's because things are going through my head and it's not in concise sentences. There's no framework to it. There's no rules behind it like we do with a conversation where it's coming out in a full sentence. It jumps from one thing and then jumps to another thing and then goes back. And then the thing you need to do, the thing you do at that time is just kind of shut down because it's too much coming at you. And then you're like, I don't know what to do with anything. And then you
Yeah.
start to get just so anxious behind it. So really writing is it's not as much the words that you're getting down, but it's more just the cadence that you're changing at the time to allow you to actually come to more of a solution or some clarity of exactly what's going on in your head. Is that a fair statement?
It's both of those things combined. If someone knows what words force them to create the victim mentality, whether they like it or not. And if
Mm.
someone doesn't, slowing down the story it's very beneficial. It gets 20x valuable if you know a little bit about the language patterns of the victim mentality, and then especially how to get the breath into the story.
Talk to me about that, about the breath. You said it starts in the head and then goes to the breath before it gets out into the next venture from there. What's happening with the breath? There's a lot of talk about breath work,
Yep,
right now. And there's a lot of different modalities that you can go into. But I've heard you say, which one of my favorite podcasts you guys, you and Kim did together, is you can do all the breath work that you want, but if the story's not right in your head, you're not even putting yourself really in the right mechanism to get the benefits of doing said protocol of breath work.
for sure. And I'm a huge proponent of breath work, and not any particular kind, because the any breath work practice is going to help people build awareness about their breathing.
Mhm.
Super important. And while we're doing that, let's address the stories that locked our breath up in our chest in the first place. Because if I sit down for a 30-minute breath work session and I'm breathing well, I'm breathing better, and then I get up and I get the text from the girl that starts the whole "she did that to me" story spinning in my head again, and then this track my chest, that fucking bitch, and delete that out if I can't cuss on here.
Okay.
Yeah, uh, I'm a very simple guy.
Yeah.
Um, and what's cool is being able to, I know cool is an opinion, call me old fashioned. If I want to breathe well, I want to breathe well, not just when I'm doing breath work.
Mm.
And the one of the main reasons, and it could be the main reason that people breathe poorly, most people's breath is trapped in their chest chronically, is because they're running different versions of the victim mentality in their head. And you can file the whole, it's definitely not an intelligence issue or a deservance issue. It's an education issue. People didn't learn how to use their words to stay focused on what's important and keep the drama down and build themselves up in their imagination. We didn't learn that in high school English class. Quite the opposite. We learned what past participles are. I don't know what a past participle is now, nor do I care.
I
Who,
haven't
who
heard that
cares?
since 12th grade. Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? Fucking grade me on it. I don't care. I'll flunk. But what I will do is do some cool things with my words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so it's if someone's into breath work, they're into this too. The yoga, the definition of yoga is it's the union. It's union. And you could say that one of the definitions of Enlifted, or what Enlifted does, is it unifies people's words and their breath. And what I've found is that I say less than I used to, and I get more done. I use less words than I used to use, and I use the words that I do use now better. As in, my rate of speech is probably, if I was guessing, 10% slower than it was 20 years ago when I first started researching this stuff. My breath resides in my abdomen, low. I breathe low and slow a vast majority of the time, which gives me, one, it keeps my body loose. That's fun. And then two, it gives me way better rhythm and timing in conversations. And so I can inflect better. Okay? When someone's breath is trapped in their chest, the story's going fast. And when the story's going fast, someone's breath is trapped in their chest. And being called a fast talker is not a compliment,
Yeah.
you know? And we've all seen people that are very upregulated and nervous and emotional and stressed, and they're talking a mile of what?
Mile a minute.
Mile a minute. And when we're doing it in our head, we say things like, I can't even hear myself.
Think.
Yeah. And that turns a potential dialogue with someone into a monologue. So the worse people breathe, the worse they listen. It's called amygdala hijack. The higher and tighter the breath gets, the listening tanks.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, there's so many good reasons to study the abracadabra. And what do I mean by that? Abracadabra doesn't mean magic. That's what most people think it means. It's Aramaic. It's an ancient language. So living language is still alive. People still speak it. And it translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence.
Mhm.
I highly suggest looking that up and sharing it with other people, especially kids. Hey, kids, you know what abracadabra means? Yeah, magic. No, it's even way cooler than that. So get them thinking about their thinking early. I'm a big Alan Watts fan, and that's my favorite Alan Watts quote. When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way.
Yeah. How did it get hijacked by like the magical community of using that word?
Um, that's a damn good question. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I
Somebody
have
listen,
no
somebody
idea.
listen and look that up. Yeah, we'll figure that out from there. So,
We could blame Steve Miller, man. Okay. Abracadabra. Gonna,
right.
gonna reach out
Reach
and
out and
grab
grab
you.
it. Oh
But
yeah. Oh,
there was like
absolutely.
the whole hocus pocus hat rabbits out of a hat thing. They hijacked abracadabra before Steve Miller Band got to it. So we'll
Yeah.
give old we'll go Stevie Miller a pass.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated with the power of words. It's something really over the past 18 months that I've been looking at a lot in myself, in conversation, as well as working with other
Yeah.
people. And the language that we use, oftentimes I see like some people will say like, oh, if I just use that word, like, well, I'm not like, how is that really like relevant to like saying a soft word or so? Like, I don't see the how that's going to benefit me in my physical health or like my mental state of just using these words. When you get into these practices, Mark, of, as you said, kind of like the rough draft and then going like into the editing process from there, what are you looking for like in that rough draft to see where this is where we need to shift or build strength in the mindset to use more powerful words?
Good question. Um, the gateway drug, we might have talked about this on our last podcast, and forgive me. Um, this is my 445th
Mhm.
podcast that I've been on talking about words and stories. So sometimes I forget what I said, where I said it. And I've only ever talked about one thing on all of those 444, 45, 40. Yeah, it was 40, 445 shows. And it's the words. Okay. So we might, soft talk acknowledge, have talked about soft talk last time. And I mean, this shit is not rocket science, anybody. Because you know why? Because you can you can mess around and find out. Pluck some soft talk out of your words and watch what happens. Now, one of the flavors of the victim mentality is chronic indecision. And if someone is chronically indecisive, I promise you there are soft talk keywords in their language, as in these little gems right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're just listening, there's some probably, perhaps, sort of, kind of, potentially, hopefully, and there's many more that are coming in. But that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's under 20.
Mhm.
And it's the gateway drug to the rest of your language because it's super easy to pluck them out. You see a maybe in a text you're about to send. 95% of the time, people would rather speak solidly than with soft talk.
Mhm.
And we do it for a variety of reasons. One of the main one is that we're just unaware. It's a very easy trap to fall into, thinking that these everyday ordinary squiggles and sounds, there's no way that the words that I'm using could have anything to do with my big and complicated scary problems.
Mhm.
There's no way it could be. They could be. I'm here to tell you that absolutely that they are. And the answer to your big complicated problems, the answer is not big and complicated. It's the words that you're using. Because you can, if you use different words, I promise you, you will tell yourself a different story. You will, if you use different words, you will get a different outcome. And if any dude out there don't believe me, uh, next time you're in position to ask a girl out, do this. Go up to her and say, um, I think I might want to one day, hopefully, go out on a date with you, perhaps. I've done that, by the way.
Yeah.
And tell me how
I
that
have
goes.
to.
And tell me how that goes. Message me on Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. Tell me about your close rate. Go do that 10 times, boys, and let me know about your close rate. Okay. Or how about if you're in sales and you ask for the sale? You ever heard of that? You do the same thing. Do you think you might want to potentially, hopefully, enroll in my coaching program? Maybe.
Yeah. Someday, perhaps.
Yeah. Throw a someday in there.
Yeah.
Why not? Or how about if you're we have this thing that we do in workshops. It's called soft goals. I did it last week, 2 weeks ago. I went and did a workshop for one of our coaches who they're part of a 20-person startup team doing some very cool tech stuff in the fitness space. And their headquarters happens to be in Charlottesville. He's from South Dakota. He flew into Charlottesville, which is 45 minutes north of where I am. And I was like, dude, what are you doing in Charlottesville? And he told me, I was like, bro, give me an hour on the house. I want to come up there, do a workshop for your people. And we did. And we talked about all this stuff. And at the end, we finished with soft goals. I had all of them write down a professional goal for 2025, which they did. And I just went around the room What's your goal? Um, I want to hit the sales record for my department by Q2 of 2025. Cool. Cool. Put a guess, the word guess anywhere in there. I guess I want to hit the sales goal for our department in Q2 of 2025, and you put it in there, and not only is there a get, but you can hear it puts up talk in there too very frequently. So the
Mhm.
thing goes up at the end,
Yeah.
and it turns it into a question, and it's comical, and it only takes one word to totally train wreck their confidence. And then I kept going. Okay, well, what do you want to do? I want to keynote our our retreat next year. Okay, put a hopefully in there. I hopefully want to keynote our retreat next year. And so here's the thing, everybody. Let's zoom out. There, go find somebody who does a really good job of talking themselves into things, and watch how they use their words. Then go find somebody who does a really good job at talking themselves out of things, and they're going to be using their words differently. I promise you. And the how is where the action's at. Why do I talk myself out of opportunity so much versus how do I talk myself out of opportunity so much?
Mhm.
One, you're getting an opinion. The second one, you're getting a process. And if you understand the process, then you can break it down. And that is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to the story that we tell ourselves, our mindset. What words are we using? How fast are we using them? And where am I breathing when I'm telling this story? And if the words are trash and the story's going super fast and the breath is trapped in the chest, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get really big, up close, scary pictures, and you're going to call it overwhelm.
Yeah. You know, the the examples are beautiful in there. And I think like the one like asking a girl out or like asking for like a sale, it feels a little more self-evident because we're talking to somebody else. Somebody can see that example of you're putting yourself out in the world. And you're like, absolutely, like I totally see that. But when it's the words inside of our own head, they get a lot more mixed up from there. And so writing them down on paper and actually going in and seeing how often that you use these words seems like that's one of the first steps to go and just switch those over, just cross them out. And then after that, is it just repetition after that of building in, like rereading it, like actually shifting the story in your mind? So now this is actually something that is changing the way that you're thinking through these old stories and then evolving into a next step. What's the steps that you see of turning this into a practice over the idea or the theory?
Great question. Very similar to strength training. Okay, so there's a massive learning curve when someone walks in a gym and let's say they're learning Olympic lifts. Okay, they learn the technique and then add on weight. Same thing. Like I swing kettlebells and I have a kettlebell coach. And the first 9 months, just technique, technique, technique. And I'm 48 years old. I've wizened up over the years. That's what he recommended at the start, and that's what I wanted at the start. Okay, that's another story. So there's a learning curve involved. Okay, and what happens is that you go find a person with a dumpster fire of a victim mentality, and I'll show you someone who's got a well-oiled machine of using victim mentality language. And if they want to change that, there's going to be, you know, some record scratches involved, and it's going to take time. Okay, but guess what? What's scarier, doing that or not doing that?
Mhm.
And the good news is most people are doing better than they think. They really are. Most people are doing better than they think, and they just catastrophize
Yeah,
because of that.
because it's in your head.
That's a
It's a
yeah. That
fast story.
it's a yes. Catastrophizing is a fancy term for worrying and focusing on the negative stuff. Words are involved in that too. Um, and yeah, so it's just like any other skill. It's just like any skill. You get better at it And what's really fun is when we'll keep soft talk on the table, you go to send that text and you go, whoa, wait a minute. There's a maybe and a could in there. There's no reason for him to be in there other than I didn't know to look for him last time. And I thought I was being socially nice. Okay. And agreeable. And then I take those out and it's a more direct interaction. Let's just say work emails. We've done so our business model is we certify coaches, and over the years we've done enough corporate trainings to get the data in, is that when people start slimming down on the soft talk, their email game improves.
Hmm.
Nobody likes getting a 5-page email with a bunch of 19 different things in there. What happens is the communication gets streamlined. It gets more clear, more succinct, and then it's an easier game to play, like a ping pong match, right? Or what's super fun, and I'm living this right now. I asked a girl out to be my date for New Year's Eve 3 weeks ago, and it was very succinct. Just boom, 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 boom. You want to be my date New Year's Eve? Yes. Go ask a girl out and go, you're really pretty. Would you like to go out on a date this weekend? Saturday? Are you free Saturday? Watch what happens. I'm not making this shit up
Yeah.
because you can test it out.
One of the things that I was thinking of, Mark, it's a lot of people, we get into the beginning process of like healing, but then you get into,
Mm.
I've called it like the healing spiral in
Mm.
there, where you're in this process of always thinking that you need to be healing, but never actually fully healed to go into the next step. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
you had a line that I love, which like, if someone has a very strong fear of being seen, they'll stay in that process of healing and then never actually get to that next step afterwards. Um, have you seen this a lot in coaches that are coming into the certification, even people that you've been connecting with, of there's almost like there's a romanticism of being on the process of healing, but then once you actually get to that step, it's like, where do I go from here to actually jump and go to the next level and keep this train moving forward?
Yeah, that is a phenomenal thing to talk about. In Lifted, we call that rummaging. We call
Mhm.
that rummaging when people are just looking for, no, I need to go back and look for that one thing that happened to me when I was sometime in my, and we're all about cleaning house. Go in there and get the big scary stories that you know about and write them out and air them out and have yourself a nice little or big boohoo or 19, but whatever. Go slay the dragons with your pen. Confront the dragon, get the gold. There's Jordan Peterson again. And at some point in time, there is a diminishing return, ROI, return on investment for our time for going into the cleanup phase. Okay. And what is way better, once that's been done to a good degree, is to celebrate wins. And your clients have got them. You all have got them. So I can talk to coaches about this. I can talk to people about this. Celebrate the wins. What's celebrating a win? So like I said, maybe 20 minutes ago, people keep the scary stories in their head and they keep the awesome stories in their head too. And it turns out that the reason people, and I don't understand the totality of this, I observe it, is that when those two types of stories, and most people keep those stories in their head, when the ouchy, scary stories are kept in the head, they're way up close and big and scary and loud and meaningful. And when the good stories are kept in the head, for whatever reason, they're way off in the distance and not that meaningful. So when someone picks up a pen and 4 steps, writes out the scary stories, and that's step 1, conversationally, write it out, title it, get specific, pick a specific event and write it out. Don't write about it, write out what happened. There's the main difference between that and, I journaled about that. Did you title the specific event of when you got bullied in front of everybody in the 8th grade and they pulled down your pants and stuck a candy bar in between your butt cheeks and everybody called you doo-doo brown for the rest of the year, like that kind of specific. Okay, did you title? No, but I wrote about it. No, no, no. Title it and write it out. Or title the time that your mom and dad sat you down, you and your little daughter and the sister in the kitchen when you were 9 and she was 7, and told you they were getting a divorce, and your whole world went from flat to round. And then from then on out, you're like, oh, I'm the man of the house now, even though I'm 9, because my dad's not around and my mom's in shambles and my sister is running wild. And so I got to take care of everybody. And then you grow up and you think you keep running that story. You got to take care of everybody. And then you're a frazzled mess, but you don't have a way out of that. Yeah, you do. It's called a pen. Pick up the stories. It'll be some of the scariest shit you ever do. It's way scarier not to do it. So anyway, you do that, and those stories, when you unlock the breath and context to what happened, which is what happens when you 4-step stuff, those stories, they zoom, they move over there and become less meaningful.
Hmm.
And now you've got some flexibility with your reticular activating system, because you can only focus on one thing at a time. And most people are focused on all the negative shit. And
Right.
so when you pick up the pen and you go get the wins, and I promise you, everybody's got wins. Times that those people were there for you, the times that you got a pat on the back, the times that you knocked it out of the park, the successes, which most of the time people, those successes, they like I said, kept in the head is not that meaningful. When you write out what happened in detail, most people have a 3rd-degree black belt in the art of diminishing, minimizing, and deflecting compliments coming from someone else to them. It's a whole other beast when it's us giving ourselves credit. You need a tool to do it, and that tool is a piece of paper and a pen. And then when you write those stories out and then read it, and then read it slow, and then read it slow with a breath in between each sentence, that's 4-stepping. For whatever reason, that it brings those stories closer and they become more meaningful. To say it another way, most people wake up and they're on trial. We put ourselves on trial every day in a case that we're not good enough.
Yeah.
And we relentlessly, it's like we got this crazed prosecuting attorney in our head. And remember when you did this? Remember when she did that? Remember when you fucked that up? Remember, and you're like, hey, dude, you said all that yesterday. And then, oh, but today is a new day. And so you got to hire a defending attorney and go and gather and present evidence in a case that you are good enough. And that's called writing it out. And so that is a major. And so we're still on rummaging and also trauma bonding, coaches trauma bonding with clients
Mm.
in an unintentional way. And I did this for 5 years, because the first 5 years of my coaching, all I knew was I was a hitman. All I knew to do was go get the scary stories. I didn't know that there
Right.
was this whole other thing of celebrating the wins. And so if a client didn't have a problem, I wasn't of any value to them. And so if they'd come in after 3, 4, 5 sessions of, making good progress, all I know to do is go get the scary stories. So guess what? We got to go find some more scary stories when it would have been
Right.
way more advantageous. So yeah, we turn the volume down on those. You don't need to have a perfect mindset, everybody. Like everything's done and taken care of. And that's another aspect of that rummaging thing. I need everything perfect before I can make moves going forward.
Mhm.
No, 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 no. Turn the
Yeah.
volume down on the scary shit, and then turn the volume up on the good stuff. And then it'll make you moving towards your goals, which will inevitably, if they're worth anything, they will inevitably force you in a good way to put yourself out there and be seen. Okay. And risk the possibility of failure. No risk, no magic. Write that
Yeah.
down. And yeah, so you make yourself, you make your clients more action prone in that way. And yet that is a slippery slope, which most people slide down more than once when it comes to healing, because they get in and they start making progress, like, oh my gosh, this is great, and I want to keep doing this. And then and here's the question: what would you do, and how would you go about doing it if there was nothing to heal in the first place? Because that's the point of healing. Healing is not the point of healing. It's you going out and kicking ass in your life and enjoying your life and enjoying being you. That's the point of going into the darkness. Going into the darkness for going into the darkness sake sucks. Why would I want to do that if that's the only thing, if that's the only reason I'm doing this?
Right. It's to see the light. It's to
Yeah.
find
And to go have more fun.
that's there's so much there, Mark, to unpack. Just the when you talked first about getting very clear and concise about what happened before, I think is such a powerful frame. Because so often we think of journaling or going into diary and just writing out how you feel at the moment. And it's very surface level where you say, no, actually go back into it and get it as clear picture as possible. Because when you do that, it's like Jaws in the water, right? As soon as you see the shark, it's not scary anymore. The scariest part is when the music's playing and it's under the
No.
water and you don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
But that piece you just, said about in that rummaging is, and I see this so much with, with therapy or any type of mindset work is seems like it's so focused on alleviating problems, but not actually looking at how to aspire and go forward and do the things that you want to do. It's so much about, all right, we need to tackle these problems. Well, if all the problems are tackled, you need to fill that in with something else. Otherwise, you're just going to ruminate on those problems again and they're going to come back. The goal of it is to not solve the shit, but it's to go and do the things that you actually want to do and do that with the best energy. I think that's such a big shift of how mindset work is normally perceived in many ways and how it's really supposed to be practiced.
Yeah. I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
So,
Like it's,
yeah. Well, Mark, I got one
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
question.
Go
I
for
got
it.
one more question I want to dive in because I mean, this is 440 plus podcasts that you've done. You've talked
Yeah.
about this a lot about work and you've articulated it so well. Is there any specific part of mindset or question that you wish was asked more by people that is not talked about enough in this field?
How do I share this with my kids? That's a great question that I'd love to get asked that daily. And when I'm done teaching directly, as in certifying coaches, um, that's I've got some choices of what I'm going to do with that amount of time that I'll get back. What am I going to do with it professionally? Because I'll continue to do this work. It was just, what direction am I going to go in it? Um, curriculum, curriculum for kids, because you get this information in children's hands fast enough or soon enough, and it's not that you're going to be solving problems, you're going to be preventing. It's not that you're going to be solving problems, you're going to be preventing them. And Einstein said, he said, intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them.
Mm,
And I'm not talking about the intellectual capacity of someone. What I'm saying is it's more of a timing thing.
yeah.
It's more of a timing thing. And when I do get asked, how do I teach this to my children? A few very tried and true and accurate and good answers come to mind. Um, One, improve how you use your language around them, because our language is an inheritance. We inherit our parents' stories and the way they use words to create those stories. We inherit our parents' breathing patterns. What do I mean by that? It's called entrainment. And children, they come into, and it could be very disharmonious, but they come into resonance, there's the word, with, or they come into balance. It could be very imbalanced with they model their parents' breathing. So very rarely does a child, okay, look at the words. They come from a high stress environment. What does that mean? That means everybody's breathing in their chest. Very rarely does a child grow up in that kind of environment and they come out breathing nice and low and smooth, and they're down regulated most of the time, and they're good listeners, and there's little to no drama, and they pick a good partner that they can have a long-term, loving, harmonious, bonded relationship with. No, it's chaos. It's chaos, and it starts with the parents' words. It's and so when a parent, and a little bit of this goes a long way, because you start thinking about those words and you start thinking about other words and you start putting this stuff together on your own. Slow down your rate of speech, parents. Do not talk to your children fast. Talk to them slowly. So you will make even better choices with your words. And when someone slows down their rate of speech, they breathe better. And when you breathe better, your children are going to breathe better. Mm-hmm. And they will inherit that breathing pattern from you. And that is quite the gift. That is quite the gift. And then also, when they're ready, talk to them about this stuff. Talk to them about at the abracadabra. And the ages are 5 to 12. The best number one piece of advice that I have for parents, other than parents, work on your own words and stories and breath, and that will be an indirect gift, direct, whatever. And how you work on them directly is a wins journal. 5 to 12. That's your window of time. Okay, that's your best window of time. A wins journal. What's that? Get a notebook and a piece of and a pen, and one win per day. Doesn't matter what it is. I tied my shoes well today. They're 5. Cool. Write a sentence. If they can't write, you write it for them, and then you show it to them, and then you read it. I tied my shoes well today. They get an A on a math test when they're 7. Okay, get your wins journal out. One right in the middle of the page. What did you do well today? And what that does is it will train their reticular activating system. Don't I sound smart? That's the lens that you see shit through, to see themselves as confident and competent. And then guess what? Wins build more wins. Yeah. And then that will inform their identity. It's like someone who is uses a lot of soft talk, and they practice, because it's a practice, indecision. If you practice indecision for long enough, eventually you identify yourself as being indecisive. And when someone identifies themselves as something, whether it's good or bad, they get 30% better overnight at it. It's like Teddy Atlas said. He goes, champions get 30% better overnight by winning the belt. Literally, on Saturday they win the belt. On Sunday they're 30% better, and it's because of an they have now identified themselves as such. And I'm on time. I'm a punctual person. You practice being on time long enough, and you compile the evidence, and then eventually you say it to yourself, I'm a punctual person. You're now even better at it. Right. Or all the indecisiveness, and you just keep flaking on stuff and can't make up your mind, and eventually I'm just a really indecisive person. Guess what? You're now 30% better at being indecisive. Or I'm good enough. Yeah. Wins. Look, I'm good enough. Evidence, children, good enough. Eventually they're going to identify themselves as good enough, and that's the keys to the kingdom. Just point them in any direction, and they're going to go crush.
Yeah. I love that. Intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful line. Mark England, dude, I appreciate you so much. I learned so much from you every time we connect. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And yeah, you got 32 years left in coaching here, so I'm sure this won't be the last time that we'll connect, but I appreciate you, man.
Dude, let's do another show next year.
Sounds perfect. Awesome. If people want to check out more of Enlifted, everything that's going on there, what's the best place that they can go and check it out?
At Enlifted Coaches, that's us on Instagram. And the certs, if you want to know more about the certifications, www.enlifted.me.
Beautiful. Perfect. All right. Till next time, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
listeners. Thank you so much. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Peace.